Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Locked In Podcast. My name is Ani.
My name is Shri.
And this is episode 14.
Today is July 4th, just another day, and we hope you all are staying home, staying safe, staying aware of everything going on. We have some exciting topics to discuss today. We're going to be talking all-decade teams for the NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball. So this is going to be talking about the 2010s, and there's a lot of names, a lot of debates in this that we anticipate, so stay tuned for that.
A great decade in sports, but right now we have some sports news to talk about. So, fresh, hot off the presses, the NFL franchise that resides in Landover, Maryland, plays at FedEx Stadium. Its team name starts with Washington, and we won't say the racial slur that follows it, are potentially changing their name from said racial slur to a more appropriate name. This is based on what essentially is a money move. FedEx threatened to pull out money. They're also a minority owner in the franchise, and Nike removed this team's jerseys from their website. But their owner, Dan Snyder, has said in the past they would never change their name. He has like an affection towards the name of the franchise that he loves since he was a kid. He has this whole story. So will he budge? And if he doesn't budge, what happens if they don't change their name?
Well, there's so many fans already with so much backlash to the fact that they have the name they currently do. And I know Cleveland in Major League Baseball, they're talking about changing their name. So there's definitely progress on that front. I feel like Washington's eventually going to cave and have another name for the franchise just because of potential backlash by their fan base, NFL fans in general. And, with everything happening right now regarding racism and people, respecting the right names and taking away credence from names they might have given more importance to in the past. It's just really important to know what you're standing for and what you really value.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what really opened my eyes up about this specific franchise's name was The Daily Show, I think 3 or 4 years ago, did a clip with one of its correspondents, Jordan Klepper, and he went out and went to an actual game of this franchise and talked to fans, but also he talked to Native Americans themselves, and he talked about what they thought about it, and he brought fans and Native Americans together, and they had a discussion. I think it's a great clip that really gives some context to this dilemma that everyone should check out. I know that even current players of this franchise, like Dwayne Haskins, have said that they would support changing the name, and Dwayne Haskins said he likes the name the Red Tails, which I think is a potential name that they could choose. You keep the same color scheme, and it's mostly similar to the other name, but the Red Tails were an airborne regiment of the Tuskegee Airmen, who were the all-black fighter pilot group in World War II. So I think, that has some symbolism, and also the color scheme fits and the name fits. So that could be one potential that most people are saying that that seems to be high up on the list of what it could be. Also, Washington Warriors, there's a lot of them out there, but I think, watching that clip, understanding the context behind the move and why, this name itself is so bad is important for everyone to do. But I think, I think this team could easily change the name, and it wouldn't be that big of a problem. Fans of the team have said they're still going to say the name is the name. They're still going to sing the song. They're still going to sing the song. They're still going to wear their apparel. So, will it change that much for fans of the team? Probably not. But I think for the people that, this racial slur hurts, I think this is going to be a big step forward.
Yeah, and some people might argue, oh, this is just performative. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. But yeah, you're right. For some people, this is very deeply rooted. And having something as simple as a name change really matters to them. So props to FedEx, for doing their money moves, and hopefully Washington changes. And we have some other NFL news, which is more game related, in that a certain Cameron Newton, who speaks on Instagram in absolute hieroglyphics, is now a New England Patriot. And I feel bad for Jarrett Stidham, but I'm also really excited for the Patriots for the first time in 20 years. We're so used to them just going 12-4, 13-3, sweeping their division, making the Super Bowl. But this is the first season I can say I'm actually rooting for the Patriots to do well.
Yeah, man, I love Cam Newton. I think he's going to be a great fit on this team. Asterisk, if he's healthy. I think Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick can come up with some really interesting concepts for the Patriots to run, and I think this team has a lot of potential. I wasted a lot of time watching Jarrett Stidham tape from the preseason just to see how good he was. I mean, you never know. Maybe there'll be a QB battle at camp and Jarrett Stidham will win over. No, that's definitely not going to happen. I think for sure Cam Newton will be starter day one if he's healthy. And I think if he's healthy for the rest of the season, he easily has the potential to lead this team. I'm pretty sure to at least the AFC East title, if not a wild card in the playoff spot. I sincerely, again, this is if Cam Newton is healthy. I doubt they miss the playoffs this year.
There's always something about these guys from Charlotte, man. Like, Steph Curry changed the NBA with his three-point shooting, and Cam Newton's arguably one of the most transformative players in football history, right? Like, his passing numbers don't scream, like, top-level elite quarterback. I mean, aside from that one MVP season, he went, like, 35 touchdowns, 10 picks, which is fantastic. But it's the running that's, like, really the X factor. Like, can he make the Patriots one of these more dynamic, modern NFL offenses? And that's something Bill Belichick really hasn't coached, right? Like, he's had experience with a pocket passer just steady for the past, like, 2 decades. So I'm really excited to see how Belichick handles one of his more challenging coaching jobs, and also how Cam, like, transforms the Patriots offense. You know, that's going to be really exciting to see.
Yeah, and I think with an NFL that's becoming increasingly more centric towards non-traditional pocket passing quarterbacks, with the likes of Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, even Dwayne Haskins on the Washington team, and, you know, Justin Herbert / Tyrod Taylor on the Chargers, whatever. I mean, there's and Russell Wilson, even, of course, can't forget about him. There's all these players now, and quarterbacks especially, that can run really well, but also pass the ball really well. And Cam Newton was kind of one of the leaders in the modern generation that was really good at both. And I think having him on the team is great because it brings the Patriots offense into a more modern era. Not that they were, like, behind, but I think it can allow Josh McDaniels to really play with the offensive playbook and open it up, because he, you know, Tom Brady isn't the most mobile of quarterbacks, but I'll also say it helps out the defense, because during practice they have what could be considered like a close enough replica to, like, the style of play that Lamar Jackson plays with potentially. So if they meet him, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson during the regular season, during the playoffs, they have experience as what it's like to defend against a quarterback that can both run and pass. So I think this is really, really good for the Patriots on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Great things all around if Cam Newton stays healthy. And if he doesn't, his contract is a very, very team-friendly contract. Lots of incentives, but those incentives basically only play off if, like, you know, he completes, you know, X percent of his passes, or plays 80% of his snaps, or reaches the playoffs, or goes to the Super Bowl, right? So I think the cap hit isn't great for the Patriots. Like, it isn't a lot, which is good for the Patriots. And I think a prove-it year for Cam, and an easy way for the Patriots to become relevant again.
Like, I think he literally signed for the minimum with incentives. Yeah. So there's no, like, it's like a no harm, no foul type thing. I mean,
just mad that the Chargers didn't sign him. Honestly, if the Chargers signed him, I mean, look, from my perspective, the Chargers are ready to win now. On their offensive and defensive side of the ball, they have so many weapons that they're going to have to pay eventually. But right now, they're all paid already. So why take a chance, draft this rookie QB, and wait 2, 3, 4 more years for him to develop, when you can just get Cam from day one, Tyrod Taylor as a backup, you know, both of them, whatever, and win today? I don't understand that, but maybe this is why I'm not an NFL GM.
Well, hopefully he turns his career around. I know he's had a rough past couple of years. Wishing him good health and a good season for the Patriots, which I never thought I'd say ever. But let's move on to these all-decade teams, man. I know we have the NBA, we have the NFL, we have MLB. Let's start NBA. So how this works is, for at least for my all-decade team, I kept it not position-based, right? Like, I know the conventional wisdom is like 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a big, but I felt that was a disservice to some of the players who deserved, like, a first team nod, or, you know, like, I didn't want to reward excellence just for being a certain position. So I have 3 teams: first team, second team, third team, and it's kind of like, it's very free form and open. So let's get right into it. Ani, what is your first team?
Yeah, so I kept mine position based, because I think that in the other sports that we have, the MLB, the NFL, there are positions, and I do agree and concede to your point that the NBA has become sort of positionless over the last few years. But I still think, for convention's sake, just like for All-Star voting and just like for all NBA teams, you vote based on position. That I have to vote based on position too. So my first team all decade NBA. So the point guard is going to be Stephen Curry. The shooting guard is going to be James Harden. The small forward is going to be Kevin Durant. The power forward is going to be LeBron James. You can switch those two, honestly. I don't really care. And the center is going to be Anthony Davis.
I'm curious why Davis.
I mean, for me, it was like, who was the best big of this era? And I think, although Davis joined the league late in the decade, quote unquote, I think he's been consistent from day one. He's unless he was injured, he's basically had a great season every single year. I think he's evolved to be one of the NBA's premier bigs in terms of offensive and defensive side of the ball. The defense part, which is, I think, a very important part of his gameplay, especially in the past 2 years. But I think he's been super consistent both on the Pelicans and on the Lakers, and I think he's proved that he's able to win and play well against the best of the best with a really, really bad supporting cast. And he's also proved that he's able to win and play with the best of the best with a really good supporting cast. I think he's just been really consistent. If there's one big I could pick from this decade, I think I would pick him.
Okay, so my first team, we have similar Curry, Harden, Durant, and LeBron. I don't think there's any doubt for any of those four names. Like, you have the best shooter in NBA history, arguably the best isolation scorer in NBA history. You have a guy who would literally fit in any era in Kevin Durant, right? Like, you can slot him in any modern offense, any old offense, and he would get you 25 to 30 points easy. You have who many people consider the best player of all time. I think he's the second best, but
second best.
LeBron James is a god amongst men. And I have Westbrook as the fifth guy in my first team. I want to reward him for his continued excellence for the last 10 years. His 2016 season, I know people like to say, like, oh, like Westbrook stat pads and he grabs rebounds that like the centers should. But what he did that year, and in the statistically, he's one of the best players ever. But like, it's not a knock on like having a big man in this, but I just don't think any of the big men I'm going to name later on deserved a spot on the first team over what Westbrook has done. Like, both as a sidekick to Durant and individually, just how dynamic he is. And he's probably the most athletic player to ever play the point guard position.
Yeah, I think Westbrook is for sure one of the best players of this decade and will go down as a great player of this game. But my question to you is, I totally get you not wanting to put a big man because you don't think they deserve it. But the NBA came out themselves with their all-decade team, and they put Kawhi Leonard on there. And so I'm curious, and they had the four that we had: Curry, Harden, Durant, LeBron, and they had Kawhi Leonard on there. Something that I basically agree with, but I had to replace him with Davis for my position-based team. So I'm the question to you is, why do you think Westbrook is the better player this decade than Kawhi Leonard?
I just think Westbrook's first 4 years were better than Kawhi's first 4 years this decade. Like, Kawhi came on, I think, in that 2012-2013 season, the year before he won Finals MVP, was the first time like people really saw like, oh, he can be something. He just like once he gets a jump shot, he's a very elite player. At that point, he was just still a defensive stud who could like somewhat space the floor. He was like your 3-and-D guy. But really, after he won that Finals MVP is when he really started getting into those like 20 point per game averages. Like, he became like an offensive machine. So I think if you take the last 5 years of the decade, Kawhi's like a first teamer, and that's like no doubt, right? Like, he's won Finals MVP for 2 teams. He's won Defensive Player of the Year. He's a well-rounded offensive player, gifted scorer, but Westbrook just did more in the first half of the decade, and that's something I kind of want to reward. So
Kawhi Leonard won his first Finals MVP in 2012-2013 season, right?
No, 2014 he won.
2013, 2014, or
2013, 2014. That was the year they beat Miami in 5.
They lost to Miami the year before. So that's still the first half of the decade, right? I mean, so like he had a great season that season in the playoffs. He was amazing. So, I mean, I would consider Kawhi's run of excellence to be 6 years. Not to say that Russell Westbrook wasn't great. I mean, he averaged triple-double in 2016, did it again in 2017, I believe. And, even in 2018, 2019, he still played really well. So not a knock on Russell Westbrook. I mean, I think your argument of he had a better first half of the decade, I think, other than the first 3 years, I think Kawhi Leonard's had a great seven years of the last decade.
Because if you take, like, Kawhi had a great series, right? Like, the person who wins finals MVP, like, when Iguodala won finals MVP in 2015, it was for the sole fact that he guarded LeBron James, right? And that's essentially what Kawhi did better than anyone else. Like, he guarded the best player in the league. And I don't know, like, his season was fine, but he didn't start having, like, truly elite offensive production until, like, that 2015-2016 season. Like, he was a very good player the first half of the decade. He was a great player the second half. And I think Westbrook was just more consistently great throughout. Is all I'm saying. Like, I have no problem if Kawhi's on the first team. It's just, my opinion just slightly differs.
No, yeah. I can see that. And it's just, for me, I think Kawhi Leonard really changed the way that we view some, like, potential players. Like, he's like a truly, like, he's a specimen. He's like a freak and like a physical freak, and like he's such a good defender, but also, that was what he's known in early on in his career, but he really developed and became an all-around player. And for me, it's more about the development. Like, I feel like Russell Westbrook 2010 to Russell Westbrook 2016, he didn't develop like you could tell even in 2010, like, oh, this kid is really good. He's a really good player. And of course, the shooting did become a little bit better, and he did refine his skills a lot more. But when Kawhi Leonard in like 2012, 2013, was playing in the finals, in 2013, 2014, won the finals MVP, his offensive game is nowhere close to where it was in 2016, 2017, and especially last year and this year. It's miles apart. So I think his development and literally him transforming himself from the first half of the decade to, one of the NBA's premier defenders, and that's it, to the second half of the decade, arguably a top 2 player in the league. I think that's really what made me be like, wow, like, if I were, to do it your way, put Kawhi Leonard. I think that's also what made the NBA put Kawhi Leonard in their top 5 or in their first team all decade.
Well, I don't have an issue with it. Like, obviously he didn't have a shot coming into the league, and it's like well known, like, his hands were too big to have like a good jump shot, but like that Spurs staff like really worked with him, and now he's one of the premier like 3-point shooters. Like, obviously you don't consider him like a high volume 3-point shooter, but he's very efficient and he has good percentages throughout his career. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna argue if you have Kawhi on the first team. It's just, I'm not the biggest Westbrook fan, but he's done some incredible things this decade.
But Westbrook is for sure on my second team. On my second team, I have CP3, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and for my big, I have LaMarcus Aldridge.
Wait, sorry. Can you say your full second team?
Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and LaMarcus Aldridge.
Wow. So you have Aldridge as your second team all decade?
I mean, for me, he is so incredibly consistent. I was debating between him and Blake Griffin, considering I already had AD in my first team, right? And between him and Blake Griffin, the fact that, like, especially in the last 3 to 4 years, Blake Griffin has not performed as well as he did in the first half of the decade. Lob City on the Clippers, right? But, LaMarcus Aldridge, he's ranked 6th this decade in total points scored. Like, 6th. And also, he started more games than any other frontcourt player. So those two things, the fact that he's been the most consistent big this entire decade, just for me, you have to reward consistency on that level. Maybe not as a first team selection, but at least as a second team selection.
So I thought about Aldridge, but he ended up not making any of my teams. I just feel like Aldridge was like very good, but he wasn't ever great. You know what I mean? Like, I liked the pairing of him and Lillard, but we didn't get to see it enough. And then he went to the Spurs, and I mean, at that point, he had one good season with the Spurs in which they actually advanced like deep into the playoffs. And I'm not talking about like his personal stats. Like, those are always like fine, but I don't know. I here's my second team. I had Chris Paul, Kawhi, so we're similar on that. I had Dirk, because what he did for like 5 to 6 years, he still maintained like a very high level of play. He won a Finals MVP in 2011. He averaged, I think, 27 in that final series against Miami. And then I have D Wade, who at the start of this decade was one of the best 5 players in the league for like 3 to 4 years, and I think that matters when you're talking about like, do we value these players? Like, would you rather have 9 like good years of Aldridge, or would you rather have like 4 to 5 like excellent years of Wade? Like at that point, it just comes to like personal bias, like who you want. And then I also had Dwight Howard on this team. Now, let me explain this. Dwight Howard from 2010 to 2014 was an all-star. Okay, he always averaged
three-time defensive player of the year.
Three-time defensive player of the year, Dwight Howard. Right? Like, yes, after 2014 and after he had back surgery, he wasn't the same player, right? Like, he wasn't the dominating big that we've been accustomed to in his early Orlando years. But
also, I think the game has changed a lot.
Yeah, like the last 5 years kind of went against Dwight Howard's favor. Like, the league just shifted against post-oriented big men, and he definitely took a hit from that. But his first like 4 or 5 years, I'm just gonna like read off his averages real quick. Hold on. So from 2010 to 2015, he was 19-13 with 2 blocks a game on 58% shooting, maintaining his like solid rim protection. So I think he was one of the NBA's like best centers. I think he made like 2 first teams and a second team in that point too. So I don't know. My second team, again, just to go over it, is Chris Paul, Kawhi, Dirk, D Wade, and Dwight Howard.
I think for me, with Dirk, D Wade, and Dwight Howard, Dirk isn't on my third team. D Wade and Dwight Howard are. The only issue with those 3 players is consistency. They were really, really good in the first half of this decade, but in the second half of the decade, 2 of them retired, and one of them just wasn't the same player. Dwight Howard did have a sort of renaissance on the Lakers, especially this year, but it just, for me, is about consistency. And, to your point, would you rather have 4 years of, great Dwayne Wade or like 10 years of good LaMarcus Aldridge? I mean, I definitely do see that point. Like, Dwayne Wade was probably one of the top 5 players in the league from 2010 to 2014, 2015. But I think for me, I just have to reward consistency. If this was the 2000s, I think it might be a different story. But because it was the 2010s, I really have to reward consistency. The fact that LaMarcus Aldridge made 7 All-Stars all during this decade, and 2 NBA second teams, 3 NBA third teams, it's just, for me, like, you can't not reward that. And maybe, I've met my personal bias kicking in here. I love LaMarcus Aldridge. I think he's, a really good player. I think for sure he deserves a third team nod at least, but for me, it's a second team nod. And again, this is because I have to include a big, and I would choose him over any of the other bigs. I mean, Dirk is considered a big, power forward and stuff, but I would choose him over Dirk because, again, of consistency. I feel like Dirk really fell off after that championship run.
Well, okay, here are Dirk's numbers. So Dirk, he's still like, he averaged in 2013-2014 21.7 points per game. So scoring was still there. I think by 2016 end, he was still averaging 18. It's just the last like 3 years, like as he was like 38, 39, and 40 years old. Like, of course, if you're a big man, you're going to have some sort of decline at that point.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
But I don't know, like, I love Aldridge. I love the mid-range game. Like, players like Aldridge, CJ McCollum, DeMar DeRozan, I just love that, the mid-range isn't dead for them yet. But calling Aldridge one of the 10 best players in the 2010s, doesn't that seem like just a small stretch?
No, because he was so consistent from the 2010s. He made 7 All-Star teams from 2012 until now. It's like he basically only missed 1 All-Star from 2012. And like, if you're gonna say, oh yeah, a player only missed 1 All-Star in like in an 8-year span in a decade, would they not be one of the best players in the league? People are like, yeah, of course. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is underrated.
I think he's underrated, but I don't think he's like a top 10 decade player. But like, I see what you're saying. Like, every year he's just good, But I want to say, like, if you did the NBA All-Star draft every year since, like, I don't know, the start of the decade, 2010, like, there's no way he's gonna start any of those rosters, right?
Which is why he's not in like my first five. But I think like because of the fact that he'd be like the first or second on the bench in all of those years, right?
I don't know about
like,
that either.
So no, some players just aren't going to be there. Some players might start, like D Rose might start for like 2 years and then just not play, another All-Star game for the rest of their career, which is sad,
Derrick Rose is one of the saddest basketball stories ever.
But like I would love if that happened, but sadly it hasn't. But yeah, for me it's just consistency. But that was my second team, and so for my third team, I have Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, and Blake Griffin.
I want to know why Carmelo.
Carmelo on the Knicks, especially Carmelo on the Nuggets for like the first year or two of this decade, and then Carmelo on the Knicks, I think are like truly some of his greatest years of his career, especially scoring wise. And Carmelo did definitely have a fall off in his career towards after 2015, 2016, but so did Dwayne Wade, so did Kobe Bryant, so did Dwight Howard, so did Blake Griffin. So for me, I think with my third team, I'm kind of doing the thing that you talked about, where like I think those 4-5 years of the decade, like the first 4 or 5 years of the decade, like all 5 of those players were really, really, really good players. And Carmelo Anthony has made multiple all-star teams this decade, and just truly one of the best like pure scorers to ever play the game. So
no, I love Melo, and I love that he's back in Portland, like having another chance to like redeem his end of career arc. It was so sad when he was like out of the league, and people were saying, there's no place for a player like Melo. Like if there's a place for Tim Hardaway Jr., there's a place for Carmelo Anthony.
And the 2010s bought us Hoodie Melo, so I think I need to reward that.
He's a cultural icon, man. But okay, I have a controversial third team. I'm gonna go.
Wait, is it all Warriors players? Is like Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Zaza Pachulia?
Those weren't even my controversial picks, but I have Draymond, I have Klay, I have Dame Lillard, I have Paul George, and I have Tim Duncan.
I think I could see a lot of those. Just Tim Duncan for me again, like one of the greatest NBA players of all time. I think for me like top 10. But it's just like he really fell off towards the last 5 years of this. He really fell off towards the last 5 years of this decade.
But I think with Duncan's value, it's not the statistical value, right? Because he's always going to be one of the best defensive players on the floor, and in the playoffs, I'm looking at his numbers right now. All his numbers in the playoffs are up, right? Like in that championship year, he averaged 16-9 with like very good defensive like metrics all across. So I don't know. He's obviously his last year was rough. Like 2015, 2016, he was like essentially a bench type player in terms of the minutes he was playing. But those first 5 years, like the 2010 through 2015 years, like he was inarguably one of the most important players in basketball.
So in that case, I'm surprised to see not an inclusion of Kobe Bryant on your list.
I think Kobe's he wasn't his team didn't do well. Like that was a case of like empty stats. Like I love Kobe, but that last 2015-2016 year was all empty stats. The year before, yeah, he had a bunch of injuries that kept him out, like in so many of those seasons.
The injuries over the last decade for Kobe, like especially over the last half of the decade, just really
like it was rough. Like it was so sad. Like
I mean, for me, it's just like you had to, like, I guess we're counting 2010 as the beginning of this decade, right?
Like 2010, 2011. Like that's like the starting season for this decade.
Oh, sad. I mean, well, he did go to the playoffs that year. I mean, he did lose to the Mavericks, but he went to the playoffs.
His Kobe's 2012, 2013, where he like carried that team to the playoffs. That dysfunctional Nash, Howard. Like,
yeah.
One of the like on paper best teams of all time, right? If you just write those names down,
the bench was not great. Objectively, the bench was not great.
No, the bench was not great. But if you look at the names that were starting, they should have been more than an 8 seed. But then just Nash had injuries. Kobe, like, I think that was the year he tore his Achilles, right? With the Harrison Barnes play. He was just driving past Barnes.
2013, 2014?
No, 2012, 2013, where he shot the free throws.
I know.
Barnes was
I don't know.
It was against the Warriors, I'm pretty sure.
No. The play is correct. I'm just forgetting the year, whether it was 2012, 2013, or 2013, 2014.
No, it was 12, 13, because that was Barnes' rookie year. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't want to compare Duncan and Kobe in this decade, just because Duncan was just he had more of an impact to winning than Kobe did. And part of that, obviously, like, Kobe didn't have the supporting cast he was, like, used to. And aging with a guard is kind of different than, like, aging with a big, burly power forward. But I like Duncan's contributions this decade.
I mean, yeah, and then based on your Warriors picks, I can't really say anything because I know you're not going to be convinced.
No, say it. Like, I want to hear why not Clay.
For me, it's really why not Draymond. I think Draymond just doesn't deserve to be in this all-decade team at all. Personally,
You think Draymond deserves less than what Blake Griffin did this decade? Like, don't get me wrong, Blake Griffin was a monster, but
1,000%.
Draymond won Defensive Player of the Year. He's always a top 5 defensive player, top 3. He's an all-around one of the best players you can have. He's one of those players who, like, he raises the ceiling for your team. You know what I'm saying? Like, he if you have superstars around him, he will make them a million times better. And that's, like, so obvious with how he plays with Steph and Clay.
I think Draymond he's a very good player. I'm not doubting that. I just really think that he got a lot of benefit from the cast he surrounded himself with. The fact that he had 2 of the greatest shooters of all time on his team was just, like, a luck of the draw. And I think, like, honestly, like, I mean, we saw Draymond did this past season on the Warriors. You know, it's not a pretty sight to see. Not again.
Nobody on the Warriors was a pretty sight to see. And Blake Griffin,
the team was terrible,
hampered by injuries and stuff. Like, last year, Blake was fine. But don't tell me Blake didn't play with, like, top level talent. He had the best, one of the best.
Of course he
did, of all time.
But I think I would rather have Blake Griffin this decade than you know, Blake Griffin played pretty good defense throughout the decade too. It's not like he was a bad defender.
Blake was never a good defender. He was hiding behind DeAndre Jordan, man. Blake is not a good defender.
No. Okay, he's not a Draymond level defender.
No,
but
he's not even a league average defender, man. Like, DeAndre Jordan covered up so many holes.
Slightly above a league average defender is what I will say. But I think offensively he added so much. It's Blake Griffin, dude. For this decade, especially on Lob City, I think you have to put Blake Griffin.
Blake Griffin kind of made, like, Twitter basketball big. You know, like, every time he dunked on someone, it was like, oh, you need to see this right now. Like, he made the Clippers a league pass team, and then they got Chris Paul, and then they should have made, like, some conference finals championship. I'll never forget that they choked against the Rockets, where Harden wasn't even in that comeback. And Game 6, they were up like 14, 15 points, like 8 minutes left in the fourth. Rockets go crazy. This is the Josh Smith, Corey Brewer, like, just a weird Rockets team. But I don't know, man. I'm not taking Draymond slander right now.
Let's move on to the NFL all-decade team.
Let's do it. I think we both have the same. We're just doing it, like, positionally, right?
Yeah, we're just doing positionally, and we're just doing one of them. So, like, we're not doing, like, a first team, second team, third team type deal. But yeah. So for my quarterback, I have Tom Brady.
No arguments there. Let's just move on from there.
Yeah. From a running back, I have Adrian Peterson.
I was going to take Lynch, and then I switched to Adrian Peterson. I think his peak years were just so much better than Lynch's peak years. And yeah, like, Lynch had more success in the playoffs, but that was also a byproduct of the team.
Yeah, I think for me, like, running back is a really tricky subject, especially in the last decade, just because prolonged success for running backs really hasn't come since the days of someone like LaDainian Tomlinson. I mean, there's still Frank Gore.
Yeah, Frank Gore is ageless, dude.
Yeah, but I think for really, like I think that's why it has to be Adrian Peterson. His prime 3 or 4 years in this decade were amazing.
Yeah, I think for this decade it was like him, Lynch, LaShawn McCoy. You can throw in Frank Gore if you want to, but he was like, Frank Gore's the LaMarcus Aldridge of football.
Yeah,
it's pretty fair, right?
I would say that.
He's just good.
Except I think like Frank Gore was like Frank Gore is good for so much longer, but yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, I had Adrian Peterson. All right, I included the fullback position.
Yeah.
I have Mike Tolbert.
San Diego Charger. Nice.
Glory years with the Panthers, though. He was really, really good for Carolina.
Yeah, that's true. I have TJ Watt.
Interesting. Why?
Because he's a fullback and he plays in 2019, 2020. So, the fact that he's there should be celebrated. Also, I think...
For your all-decade team?
Yeah, I think really, like, he did a really good job these past 3 or 4 years with the Chargers.
That's biased.
No. I really think, okay, the Chargers are one of the only teams that have a fullback and actually use it. But I think, he's a lot more versatile of a fullback than, also, I really, consider Mike Tolbert more of a running back than a fullback.
Well, he as a fullback, he was a 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro.
No, I understand this, but when he came to the Chargers, he became essentially a running back. He wasn't really a fullback anymore. So I think that's why I didn't really think about him. But yeah. No,
I don't think he never had more than aside from his San Diego years, on Carolina, he never got more than his peak year was 361 rush yards. That's wild, dude.
Yeah. He was always just a guy you needed when it was 3rd and 2 to just go in and plug the hole.
Use your conversion back.
Love playing with him in Madden, but
this is a chunky fellow.
Who do you have for your one wide receiver?
Every bone in my body wanted to take Julio, but I took AB.
Ah, nice. I took Larry Fitzgerald.
I'm not gonna argue. It's.
Yeah, for me, it was between Larry Fitzgerald and Calvin Johnson, but the fact that Calvin Johnson retired in 2016, I was I have to take. For me, Larry Fitzgerald, I don't know.
I like Antonio Brown's explosiveness. He just had better. He was more of a game breaker than Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald.
No, for sure, but Fitzgerald was so consistent.
And Brown was pretty damn consistent too. Aside from his first year, he was a monster. It was guaranteed 1,200, 1,300 yards.
Yeah, I love Antonio Brown as a football player. Not as a person.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring that up.
I know, but But I think really he was really a transformative weapon this decade. I just really love Larry Fitzgerald and feel like he never gets any recognition. So that's why I chose him. Yeah. For tight end, I'm assuming you had a Gronk.
Yeah.
Yeah, even as a Chargers fan, I can't say Antonio Gates was better than Gronk this season, this decade.
I wanted to say Darren Waller, but I think that would have just. That's podcast errors 101.
Who do you have for your tackle?
I put Joe Thomas because there's no other tackle who deserves recognition.
I put Joe Thomas too. Yeah,
he's one of the best to ever. He's one of the best tackles of all time,
and the best Cleveland Brown, or second best Cleveland Brown, Jim Brown.
Jim Brown, and then Joe Thomas.
Yeah.
Jim and Joe. That should be a podcast. Jim and Joe, explaining why our team sucks.
With special guest Baker Mayfield every week. Who do you have yours as your guard? I had Marshall Yanda.
I put Zach Martin. I almost put Yanda, but explain why.
So for me, I think Zach Martin really played a big role in that Cowboys rush offense. Rushing part of the offense. He was a really, really good guard pulling and stuff, and he really did a good job blocking and protecting for Zeke. But I think Marshall Yanda was just more consistent, and I think better at pass blocking. So, I think he's a more all-rounded back, and I think guard. I think he had he was just more consistent for me.
No, I definitely thought Yanda initially, and before looking anything up, I was just gonna write him down and not really look into it, but. Ever since he came into the league, Zach Martin's made the Pro Bowl. He's a 4-time All-Pro. And I think we're just so conditioned to hearing Yanda's name as the guard of the NFL, right? He's just been doing it well for so long. But if you look at this decade, Zach Martin didn't even play the first 4 years of the decade. He wasn't in the league. And then 6 years, 6 Pro Bowls, 4 All-Pro. I just think he's doing it at a higher level.
No, for me, it was really between those two, but also I couldn't include a Cowboys player on my list, so.
Cowboys have had some fun off-season adventures. Just ask Ezekiel Elliott.
For my D-tackle, I'm assuming you also had Aaron Donald.
Are we skipping the center?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. And I need to shout out my boy Alex Mack.
Yeah, I put
for the
Travis
center.
Frederick. I honestly had to look this one up. I had no clue.
No, I
who
mean
was
for me
like
it was between Pouncey and like Mike Pouncey and Alex Mack, but I think Alex Mack is just so good on the Falcons, and he was really an integral part to the offensive line the year they made that run. Lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Again, super consistent, but just a really reliable center, and that's why I chose him.
Yeah, I had Travis Frederick because I know he had like an illness that like cut short his career, but he was Pro Football Focus like 5 consecutive seasons. He was a top 5 center in the league, and he had one of the great like runs for a center, and then, yeah, it was short, but I want to reward him for having his career being cut short. That's like really unfortunate. He was a very good player.
Yeah. So for D tackle, I had Aaron Donald. I'm sure you did too.
Yep.
Yeah. So for defensive end, I had JJ Watt.
No questions there.
Okay. For your, I guess, middle linebacker, right? Who did you have?
Yeah, I put Von Miller for middle linebacker, and outside linebacker I had Khalil Mack.
Interesting. Okay. I wouldn't consider Von Miller in a middle linebacker, so.
I think that's his like naturally listed position.
No, he's an outside linebacker.
Oh, really? I think on Pro Football Reference it's like
No, I'm
lists him
99%
as middle
positive.
linebacker.
Really?
Yeah.
Because he always plays on the end. He never plays he's always on the line.
With these linebackers, I really like don't know how to classify them because they play all over the place. Like Mac will rush outside, he'll rush inside. Like there's
No, I know, but I mean,
impossible to classify.
but Khalil Mack doesn't usually play on the second level of the defense, right? I consider a middle linebacker a linebacker that plays on the second level of defense, someone like
drops into coverage every now and then.
Yeah, like Bobby Wagner, or like Luke Kuechly, or Patrick Willis, or like Navarro Bowman. I consider like an outside linebacker someone that is on the first level that's rushing. Someone like Khalil Mack or Von Miller or like Julius Peppers, the defensive end. But yeah, like one of those guys. So like, I mean, I chose Luke Kuechly for my like traditional linebacker, and then I chose Von Miller for my outside linebacker.
Oh, that's fair. It's between Kuechly, Miller, and Mack. I think that's like not a debate. Like you can add Bobby Wagner, I guess.
No, I think Bobby Wagner was really close to being like to usurping Luke Kuechly for me, but dude, Bobby Wagner didn't miss a tackle.
Yeah, no, he's incredible. I just think Kuechly's better.
No, I think Kuechly's better too, but no disrespect to Bobby Wagner, man. Like, such a good player.
Okay, my cornerback was Richard Sherman, with much apologies to Darrelle Revis and Patrick Peterson.
I put Patrick Peterson, was really close to putting Richard Sherman, but I just, at the end of the day, I was just like, I mean, like, Richard Sherman had like 2 off years in between his like good years and bad years, or sorry, in between his good years. And for me, like, Patrick Peterson was just consistent more often. So for my 2 safeties, I had Earl Thomas and Eric Berry.
I had Earl Thomas. I just had 1 free safety. I didn't even put a second, but yeah, sure. Eric Berry is like the honorable pick. Like I love that guy. He's been through a lot.
There's Eric Weddle. There's Tyrann Mathieu. There's Ed Reed, I guess, if you want to include him. But I think that's more of a last decade pick than this decade. But
I think Weddle's like a close second for me.
Yeah. It just, for me, consistency, and like Eric Berry, man, great player, been through a lot. But
if you survive cancer, you make this list.
Yeah. And then so for kicker, I had Justin Tucker. Shout out UT, hook 'em.
No doubt.
Yeah, and
is
so
he the greatest kicker in NFL history?
No, because Adam Vinatieri's clutch moments, dude. Like, I mean, it has to count for something. So,
yes, but the accuracy.
I don't care, dude. I mean, it's Adam Vinatieri. Adam Vinatieri hasn't lost the Colts and Patriots a lot of games. He's won them so many games.
No, that's
like Justin Tucker, like maybe wins like the Ravens. He doesn't lose them games either, but he just doesn't win them as many games as like because the Ravens only won 1 Super Bowl. So
that's fair.
Yeah. And then for punter, I had your boy Shane Leckler.
I did too. I needed to represent, dude. That guy could boom it. Like,
yeah, I mean,
the most exciting part, let me tell you, when the Raiders suck, they suck, right? The most exciting part is like, can Shane Leckler pin them at like the 5? That's what we woke up for on Sundays.
Yeah, I think Shane Leckler, and also on the 49ers, Andy Lee, and also Pat McAfee were part of this old school generation of just like booming kicks. But I was really tempted to put, a very new school punter, Johnny Hecker on my list.
Johnny
just
Hecker's
because
good.
I think Johnny Hecker really revolutionized the way punting was seen instead of just like a kick it as far as possible.
It's like an art, dude.
Yeah, it became more of a strategy, more of an art. And with the prevalence of Johnny Hecker on the Rams, came Sam Cook on the Ravens, and even the drafting of fellow Longhorn Michael Dixon on the Seahawks. The fact that they actually took a pick and drafted him, he is an amazing punter. Won the MVP of the Texas Bowl during 2017 Texas Bowl. But the fact that Johnny Hecker kickstarted this whole sort of punting revolution, that punting is now considered a weapon, and you see all these punters across the league kind of imitating that. I think that really has to give some credit, but still I think Shane Leckler is too good to not give him this nod.
Have you seen the Sam Coke punting tutorial video where he goes over the different spins and where to hold the lace and...
Yeah, I mean, and I watch a lot of Pat McAfee, and he always talks about how to punt and stuff, and is super cool.
Shout out Pat McAfee for such a dope post-career gig.
Yeah, and I love the way especially during the season, he'd explain kicking and punting things, and it would be make so much sense. Adam Vinatieri shanked this one kick in Pittsburgh, or he shanked a couple of kicks, but
he explained that super well. Yeah,
so well. Yeah, and so just yeah.
All right, I have the last position for football. I have the return man, and I have Devin Hester.
Has to be. I think for me it was Devin Hester or Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill's only played 3 years.
I thought about Cordero Patterson too.
Oh yeah, really good. Cordell Patterson's really good too. But man, Devin Hester is just a legend.
Nice. That was a pretty we had a lot of consensus on the NFL team. I think it's easier to pick top players for the NFL than basketball, just because there's, I don't know, it's weird how the hierarchy works in football.
I mean, considering there's only been 4 Super Bowl championship or champions this decade, or the past decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eagles, Patriots, the Giants, I
think your argument's void when you think that the Warriors, Cavs, and Heat have won
yeah, that's true.
It's you just have to take into account.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And in the MLB, the Giants won 3 championships this decade. But hey,
a lot of repeat champions going on.
Yeah. But this all-decade team for the MLB, my catcher, I have Buster Posey.
I took Molina.
Yeah. It was me, Buster Posey, or Molina. But the fact that Buster Posey won 3 rings and 2012 NL MVP, and the fact that he won the batting title in 2012, and the fact that he was 2010 Rookie of the Year, and he's been consistent. He's caught a perfect game, 3 no-hitters, I
just love watching Yachty when he's catching. The way he, pitchers just feel comfortable when he's behind the plate. And I think that has to matter for something. It's really a toss-up. You can't go wrong with either Posey or Molina.
I just always it's just made me so mad. Whenever the Giants would play the Cardinals, because Yachty was so good, it was just man, why can't you have a bad catcher?
It was a catcher's duel at that point. You have Posey,
it was super interesting.
I think Posey's slightly more gifted offensively, but Yachty has a better command of handling a pitching staff. So it's just what you prefer at that point.
No, I think Buster Posey's almost as good as Yachty defensively as well.
No, exactly. It's just that slight edge for both. Yachty's a brilliant offensive player. He's just not Buster Posey, and I think the same goes for vice versa on defense.
Yeah. Who do you have for first base?
I took Miggy.
Yeah, I think for me it was between Miggy and who I picked, Joey Votto. Just the fact that for me, Miggy won the Triple Crown, 2012, amazing season. But first off, failed to capitalize on that and win the World Series. Took his team to the World Series, but that was a stacked team.
First of all, tell me what Joey Votto has done.
I will tell you what Joey Votto has done, because he's done quite a lot.
Playoffs.
Okay.
I don't want to hear Miguel Cabrera didn't win the World Series.
But okay, so in the 2010s, Joey Votto also won an NL MVP, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he led the league in on-base percentage 7 of the 10 years, and he's only one of 3 hitters to do so, along with Ted Williams and Roger Hornsby.
Okay,
so for me, it's more about long-term, decade consistency. That's my thing with baseball is decade-long consistency, and I think Joey Votto has been more consistent this decade than Miguel Cabrera.
Okay, let me tell you Miguel Cabrera's batting averages for the decade. Starting in 2010, 328, 344. And for reference, like these are good numbers. 330, 348, 313, 338, 316. One down year in 2017 where he hit 249. And then he went 299, 282. Right?
Look at Joey Votto's.
No. Let me continue a little bit. In this time, he's won 2 MVPs. He won the Triple Crown. He made the playoffs most of these years.
He's won 2 MVPs?
Yeah, he won back-to-back MVPs, dude.
2012 and 2038, you're right.
Yeah. Like, he's inarguably, like, the best first baseman, at least in the AL. Like, if you want to go... If you want to compare him and Votto, like, you can, like, nitpick here and there. I just think Miguel Cabrera is, like, offensively leaps and bounds beyond Votto.
Well, okay, this is Joey Votto this decade, okay? He's hit 324, 309, 337, 305. He had one off year in 2015, 244, but then 314, 326, 320, and then 284 and 261. But he's made an All-Star 6 times? Six times.
Miggy's a 7-time All-Star in this decade.
How many?
7.
Okay, fine. I'll give you this one. Yeah, I guess...
it's close, though. It's close. Like,
yeah.
Joey Votto's great. All right, here's... I didn't want to do this for my second baseman, but I put Altuve.
No, I had to pick Altuve, too, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's a...
Cheater.
I was thinking Cano, but it's just like, it's Altuve.
Both would have been cheaters, then.
Yeah. And then, so for my third baseman, I picked Nolan Arenado.
I wrote down Beltre Arenado toss-up.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just the fact that, like, Arenado's been so good the last 7 years. I think he's, like he's made 5 All-Star games in a row or 6 All-Star games in a row, and it's just, yeah, man. Like, he's been so consistent the past, he's won a Gold Glove in all 7 seasons he's played, 3 NL home run crowns, and 5 straight All-Stars. Is like the past 7 years he's been so good. But again, Adrian Beltre is one of the best third basemen to ever play the game. 3,000 hit club, 4 All-Star teams this decade. So it's really a toss-up. I agree.
Beltre is also one of the most fun players to watch.
Amazing, so funny to watch.
His on-deck antics, his like messing with Felix Hernandez. Like, he's just one of the most like entertaining baseball players. So
exactly,
I really like that. You can pick either one. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Center fielder. If you say anyone other than Mike Trout. Yeah.
What about shortstop?
Huh?
What about shortstop?
Oh, shortstop. I went Andrelton Simmons. I like the defense.
I don't know. I think you need to have. I think there's players that have good defense and good offense as well, but
he's not. He's like a above average hitter.
Yeah. I picked Troy Tulowitzki.
That's fair. Like, in his like, I wouldn't call it a short peak, but I felt like it was abbreviated because of injuries. Like, every year he would just have something. But
I mean, he made 5 All-Star teams this decade. So,
but playing in Colorado is like inflation.
Come on, dude.
It is, dude. It kind of is.
It's not that.
The air is thin.
He's also really good defensively. So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, outfield, I had Mike Trout, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Center fielder, Mike Trout, of course. Right field, I took Mookie Betts.
I took Giancarlo Stanton.
Interesting. Why? Like that? I don't know. I just thought Mookie Betts was like a more complete player.
He's too new. He's only played like
since he's come into the league, he's done nothing but like win MVPs and like
he won 1 MVP, dude.
Yeah, he's in the last 4 years, he's like one of the best 4 players in baseball.
I agree with this, but I think if you want to be one of the best players in this decade, you need to play at least more than 4 years. So, yeah.
I think his impact is greater than Giancarlo's impact in baseball thus far.
I don't know about this, dude. Giancarlo changed his name, and that was a big deal. And then changed it back.
He also played for the Marlins under Derek Jeter.
Yeah, and then he played for the Yankees.
Sad. He's never been on like a very successful team, right? Like even with his year with the Yankees, I remember a lot of fans kind of like turned on him throughout the season because he wasn't producing what he was in Miami.
Dude, he's still at like 30 plus home runs.
No, I know the power was there, but like it's the strikeouts that like bother me with Giancarlo.
I don't know. I just don't think Mookie Betts can be on the all-decade team, like only playing half the decade. You know,
I'm not gonna argue Giancarlo too much. Who's your left fielder?
Andrew McCutchen.
Easy.
Yeah, has to be so good, dude. So good.
McCutchen's like 3 years where he was like winning MVP and one of like the most exciting players in baseball. That was so fun to watch.
So good, and like he led that Pirates team to like a playoff run in 2014, and just.
Dude, they could never get out of the wild card game. I remember they always lose to the Giants. Like there was something about I don't know. I thought if the Pirates like made a series, like if they just got past the wild card game, they could have advanced to like an NLCS or something.
They had a really good pitching rotation again in 2014. They had Garrett Cole, who started the game, and then Brandon Crawford hit a grand slam against him.
Garrett Cole then wasn't Garrett Cole now. Like he wasn't like an all-world beater.
I know, but he's still Garrett Cole. I mean, yeah, dude, Garrett Cole now is something else for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Cole, my starting pitcher. This is, dude. I think this is the hardest one for me because I took into account playoffs. I took into account like the ERAs, like the WAR, like everything you take into account, like. Wins. I honestly didn't even take into account wins because I think that's a very overrated stat in baseball. Like wins need to go. Like you need to just look at the advanced metrics and not just the raw counting numbers. So I took Scherzer, man.
I think this was like literally a toss up between three players for me: Scherzer, Verlander, and Kershaw.
Exactly. You know, like that was.
Yeah, I picked Kershaw. Just because, you know, he won the Triple Crown, 3 Cy Young awards, you know, 2014 NL MVP.
But you can't tell me the playoff numbers are like concerning.
No, you know, which is the biggest thing about Clayton Kershaw compared to Max Scherzer is the playoff numbers are not very good at all. But, you know, still the fact that the Dodgers did reach the playoffs with Clayton Kershaw, so it's not like he was so.
Given the Dodgers payroll and their starting rotation and every single player 1 through 9 in the lineup, like there is no way they shouldn't have made the playoffs.
It's not like he was so bad that he prevented them from making the playoffs.
No, like not prevent them from making the playoffs. But once you get into the playoffs, like when you're the Dodgers and you win like 100+ games year in and year out, there's a certain expectation that your number one starter doesn't just give up like 5 runs every time he takes the mound.
I agree with this. His regular season stats are so good. It's just like, dude, he struck out 301 people in one season. It's insane.
That's fantastic. I think he's the James Harden of baseball. Like incredible numbers. Like inarguably a top 5 player in the game when right. Like I think in these last few years he's kind of tailed off, but at his peak he was like one of the top 3 players, if not. Like definitely the best pitcher, like one of the top 3 players, but he just has this like playoff hump he's like yet to get over.
Yeah, for sure. But I think also like gotta shouts out to Justin Verlander, like 2 AL Cy Young awards, AL MVP, Triple Crown.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, 2 no-hitters, led the league in strikeout 4 times. So much, like so much. So, you know.
He was like in trouble for a couple of years until he went to the Astros and then he just completely turned it around. So good for him.
Dude, yeah, and then, you know, can't forget about Zach Greinke, super good,
very underrated.
Chris Sale, but also Madison Bumgarner. I think, you know, if you're going based on pure playoff success, it has to be Madison Bumgarner.
I wish Tim Lincecum's prime lasted longer.
Oh my God, Tim Lincecum is, yeah, I really miss Tim Lincecum, dude.
Absolutely,
but I mean the way he pitches, no way his prime could have lasted longer. He was violent pitcher.
He was like very Steph Curry-ish, like the way he like took the league by storm.
Yeah, but yeah.
2 MVPs or like 2 Cy Youngs.
2 Cy Youngs, led the league in strikeouts, just so good.
All right.
And yeah, on that sad note about Tim Lincecum's career, it is an end to another locked-in podcast.
Relief pitcher. Our last.
Oh my God, I forgot about a relief pitcher.
Player. All right, I have Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah, I have Chapman too.
Convince me about Craig Kimbrell. Like, why shouldn't I put him?
Chapman pitches faster.
Yeah, that's fine. And Chapman's also more fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, that wraps it up. Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, you're a real one.
The closer closes the episode.
The closer closes the episode. Hopefully they don't give up 6 runs like Kershaw would, but we're all about improvement here, becoming better people, becoming better pitchers. So Clayton, if you're listening, here's to that. Thank you guys for listening. We have some exciting stuff coming up. Next episode we'll probably announce it, but yeah. Ani, anything to add?
Stay safe, wash your hands.
Wash your hands, people. Peace.
Let's go. You know what I'm saying, man? I think I just made like 42 different sports references in 2 verses.